Welcome back to Richo Hobby and Art. I'm back on the trail looking for autumn scenes, specifically at the Panther Creek State Park in eastern Tennessee near Morristown, but other places as well. This is a little later in the season, so most of the leaves have come down, but it's still part of autumn. It makes for a lot more of a rustic scene when there's leaves everywhere and you really can't see the ground. It also makes it difficult to paint. But there's some scenes here and other places that I'd like to try to capture in a painting. So let's see what happens. This spot right here where I'm panning the camera, right there with those boulders, that's what I want to capture in a picture. This is not actually the first painting that I did as part of this series, but it is one of them of interest because of all the leaves on the ground, in addition to all the trees in the background, plus all the rocks, both in the background and in the foreground. And as you know, trees and rocks are a little difficult for me, but let's see how we do. Well, starting out, I put a line in to differentiate between the ground and the sky, colored the sky, put a faint area in the background where the ridge is going to be, and then started adding trees. Now, there are two larger trees sort of in the center and towards the foreground that you can sort of see in this picture. Those had been drawn in place with the rocks around them and then masking or frisket added to that area to kind of protect it from the other paint going on, like the sky and what would be put down for the leaves. At this point, more color is added to the ground. It's sort of a base color. I believe it was yellow ochre, maybe mixed with another color to just gotta give a quick wash. Now, this is all in acrylic. This is all in acrylic paint, so it's not really a wash. It's more of an application, but it's yellow ochre put down to sort of give the basis of the leaves so it's not just white paper. So this is the technique that I'm using to make the leaves, all the leaves on the ground. Just using a flat brush, somewhat dried, applying that to the paint on the palette, which would be a mixture of yellow ochre and maybe a little either vermilion, rose, or something else. Probably at this point it's just yellow ochre mixed with a little, I don't know, with something orange to give it a little more tint, and just hitting the paper with it. When I do re-wash or re-rinse the brush, you notice I'm using some paper towels to take some of that, some of the wetness away from it, so I'm not just getting water on the paper. I need that pigment to really just kind of speckle out onto the ground to be the leaves, and then just layering that in. I'm not sure whether this is a right or wrong approach to doing it, but it's kind of what I'm at in doing this type of application. And as you can see, I put a little more red into the paintbrush to give it, because it's not one kind of leaf on the ground, it's several different kind of leaves, and they have shadow and they have discolorations, and so trying to get that all on the ground to make it look at least somewhat uniform in that there are a bunch of leaves on the ground. All right, so here's the final image, the final painting. And so a lot more has been done since the application of putting leaves down. The main thing that's different here that I didn't show on video is adding a lot of white. And I think that was white that was just added on without bringing too much light. Like this is really white over here on this rock, but the white was added here in such a way that it didn't stand out as white. Of course, you could see white on the trees because the way the sun was shining, it was it was a cloudy day. It was late November. When we did this hike, it was the day after Thanksgiving. That gives you any idea the time of year that's what it would have been. And so believe the light was shining this way, because you've got darkness over here, darkness over here. And so, all in all, I like a lot of my paintings, and a lot of paintings that you might do, you kind of change some of the colors. This was if you look at the original here, it's a lot darker. This area is a lot darker. But you look at this picture, there's a lot more orange, there's a lot more color. And I think in my mind's eye, as I took that hike, I was trying to give that scene more color than it maybe actually had. And so in the rocks, I think that my rocks came out relatively well compared to some of the rocks I've done in the past. I know I have a lot of, rocks are challenging, boulders are challenging, getting all those texture and the shadowing and that sort of thing. But this was a fun one to do, and let's look at the next trail and the next painting that I attempted. Back on the trail at Sharp's Ridge. Sharp's Ridge is just north of Knoxville. It's Sharp Ridge Memorial Park, has excellent views of downtown Knoxville and the Smoky Mountains beyond. I went on this trail in early November, and there were some excellent colors, beautiful yellows and oranges and reds, as you can see in some of these other pictures here. Throughout the light, there was a sunny day, some beautiful, beautiful colors. The picture that I decided to paint was actually in a slightly different direction. It was the beginning of the trail. This is the Firebreak Trail. It was right at the beginning, showing the you could see the side of the hill, the trail, the pagoda, which shows where the beginning of the trail is, and the road beyond that. And it's kind of slopes down, and then more of the ridge behind. And so that's the one that I wanted to really paint. So let's look at some of the stages and the final one of that one. Well, starting out, I did a little, this is the first stage. I did a drawing showing where the ground would be different, separated from the sky. Drew in the path, the pagoda, and then started to put in some color of the trees in the background. This is sort of it's not the ridge, it's the trees of the ridge looking north, because you're on the south side looking north. More color has been added and some trees as well. There's a lot of trees in this picture, and so some in the foreground are important, some others in the background are not as important, and so color is added instead of putting in trunk stems, that sort of thing. More color added, especially to the right side, where there's still some green leaves and weeds and branches and bushes and stuff like that. It's kind of messy on the right, so I knew that would be a little bit of difficulty. I did not put any masking fluid on the pagoda. I left it the way it was because it was going to be a very dark brown color, and I knew that would override whatever was painted over it. You could tell that I sort of made color, except for the right side, everything I tried to keep away from the lines anyway. And then color was added to the left side where all the leaves are going to be. All right, so this is the final of that one. Sometimes when I take pictures of it, it doesn't really show how strong the colors are over here. It always looks lighter, and I'm not sure how I can change that. It's already behind glass. I've already put it in a frame. Like probably many of you, when I do a painting that I like to put it on the wall so I can look at it more often than just putting it in a book or putting it in a pile and forgetting about it. So you could see all the color. This is in darkness, or well, not darkness. This is in shade more than you got some areas of light on the path. And then the pagoda has been painted in. I've also added posts. There's posts along the road of probably a fence or something. There were electrical wires that went through the painting, and I decided on my own not to include those. That is the prerogative of the artist, that if you want to put that in, you can, but I chose not to. And then I've got some white in here. I believe I achieved this white by actually scratching the picture, or scratching the paper with a razor blade, or it would have been a scalpel, an X-Acto scalpel, and that's a way of adding some white, because I wasn't able to achieve that with a white pigment. You got some other whites down here that actually is used with paint. And then, there was a tree here, and I decided to cut that off and just have its branches. And then more of these weeds and whatnot down here. This is a painting that does well from a distance rather than close up. So that's why I have it hanging on my wall, and I can sort of see that trail as it went back up towards the road where you parked. So here's the final on this one. This was more of a quick paint. I think I just did this in maybe 2 nights, 2 sittings. And so you've got the barn in the background with the silos, and some vegetation. I didn't put a lot of color into that field. I spent more time on the barn and all of this stuff up here. It was quite a mess of stuff, so I tried to get as much, of that in there. I didn't spend as much time on this tree, but I spent more time on shadowing on this tree. So I believe in the original, there's just stuff. This whole area is probably covered with sticks, and I wanted to be able to see the barn without covering it with a lot of trees and that sort of thing. So that's the final on that one. This last painting that I'm working on is based on a walk I did in mid-November at the University of Kentucky Arboretum in Lexington. Some beautiful colors that day throughout the park. It's a very large park arboretum located near the athletic stadiums, and we just stopped there on our way back from travels to other states. But some of the vegetation had already gone past its prime, but others just gave a beautiful view, a beautiful color of the season. So this is where I am at in this one. Got tree over here, color, trees over here. There's a lot more that has to be done in here, a lot more color as well as shadowing for these trees and some other things. I think there's some bushes over here that need to be added. Okay, well, here's the final version of this picture. I have taken it off the board, taken off the tape, taken off the board, let it dry a little longer. So it's a little crinkly, but what I do is I put it under weight to flatten it out. And so, I may have been a little overzealous in my shading. Shading is always very difficult for me. This is Payne's Gray. I've sort of worked out to be the tree coming down, and I've used some of that in the background for this tree. And there's, in the original, it looks like there's some more trees maybe over here casting shadows in this direction. I don't know. As far as the leaves down here, I didn't really know what else to do there, so I just kind of speckled them on, but maintaining or retaining some of the green for that. Overall, I like the way it's turned out compared to the way it was originally. When you saw it at that work in progress point in the video, that was filmed late last month, and I wasn't sure where I was going to go with this. And I think adding a little more detail here, extending the trees down, because the trees and this tree are kind of at the same level. So getting that fixed, adding some extra features certainly helped out. And there's a lot of bright color in here, which is hard to replicate when you're dealing with acrylic paint. But I think I've got a little better handle on it. I think there's still a lot of work to do, but as I've said before, every painting is a practice, and so this is just one more. So I think I'll continue painting some autumn scenes, continuing to work on that, on practicing on that, and until then, I'll see you next time on the trail.